This is Tom Barnhart. I'm here in the offices of CEC Government Relations in Warsaw with Marek Matraszek, founder and CEO. Good to see you again, Marek.
Thank you very much, Tom. Good to see you.
Glad to be here. We wanted just to talk a bit about, first of all, our upcoming USA-CEE Investment Summit, which is set for November 17th, 100% online. And CEC and yourself are keynote speakers and opening up the day with a briefing on the political environment of Central Europe. Hard to compress that for the whole region, of course, but appreciate your involvement in the initiative. We're excited about it. We have great speakers, and I just wanted to talk a bit about your role with the U.S. investors into Central Europe and a bit of your opinions about what's happening these days. Yeah. Let me ask you first of all, tell the audience a bit about what we're doing. So it's about the day is focused on the investment trade flows between Central Europe and the U.S. The 3 C's initiative figures quite prominently in the day with the related subjects of infrastructure, defense, which I know you're quite involved with, energy, eMobility, etc. But tell us a bit about the 3 C's initiative, which I think is not widely published or widely known, but it's a big initiative, $1 billion coming at it very soon, very quickly. But just give the audience a little bit of a brief overview of what is the 3 C's initiative.
Well, you're right, Tom. There's not enough known globally about the 3 C's initiative because it is a very important development here in Central Europe. It was originally established as a result of a bilateral agreement between the Polish and Croatian presidents, but it's very quickly developed in what is a very interesting investor framework, bringing together multiple countries from the Baltics to the Balkans. The 3 C's, by the way, relates to the Baltic Sea in the north, the Adriatic in the west, and the Black Sea to the east. So if you imagine Central Europe, it's bounded by that triangle almost of water around Central Europe. Mm-hmm. And basically the idea was to try and create opportunities primarily for US investors actually in that area in 3 or 4 key industrial sectors, primarily energy, infrastructure, and digital. That's expanded since, but those were the original 3. And it was to, on the one hand, act as an additional framework for investment added on to the already considerable EU funds that are flowing into the region, but also to diversify or create the opportunities for the region to diversify away from reliance on solely EU money, or, as was actually being already done by China, reliance on either Chinese or Middle Eastern funds. So in a way, creating a diverse investment structure. And to that end, recently an actually investment fund has been established, primarily funded by Poland as well as 3 or 4 other countries within the 3 C's framework, to give that sort of kick-start to key investment in infrastructure projects in the region.
And that's infrastructure, right?
Yeah, but again, it's really looking to the US and creating opportunities for US companies, and the 3 C's initiative has actually been heavily supported by the US administration for very good reasons, giving opportunities for US companies, but also creating that diversity of cash flow into Central Europe and to prevent the region from being reliant only on one source of funding.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk a bit about the COVID situation is short term. It's going to go away at some point, but let's talk a bit more about the long-term investment thesis for Poland and Central Europe. Is it intact? How has it changed in the last couple of years? How do you see it in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years? Opportunities for U.S. investors here? What are the sectors that might be the most interesting for them? But sort of the long-term impact or long-term opportunities for American investors in the region?
Well, I think the Central Europeans are really looking for 2 things. One is interconnectivity. This is the big theme. Mm-hmm. Because these countries, remember, only 30 years ago, were not just part of the communist empire. They were actually separated, physically separated, not just from the West, but also from between themselves. Under the communist system, these countries were really very autarkic in their economies, and the degree of interrelated infrastructure between them, going from the north-south, is actually very limited. So part of the rationale for the 3 C's was to look at those investment projects which are help the region recover its cohesion, recover its natural interrelated economic relationships.
So what are some examples
looking
of
at,
that?
well, I mean, highways and infrastructure is a great one.
Okay.
Road and rail, there's a great interest in that. Secondly, interest very much in energy infrastructure, particularly pipelines, interconnectors. And it's not just about gas, it's also about electricity. It's all about creating a network of interconnected energy relationships, which will again help to diversify the region away from reliance on monopoly suppliers. And it extends into digital, because one of the things these countries really do need is to increase their digital capacity. That means cable, that means 5G networks, and particularly on the eastern flank, where you do have sometimes, particularly on the fringes, on the border, a lack of that sort of infrastructure as well. So it's bringing the region together in a much more cohesive economic way, and thereby creating the foundation for more long-term growth. And this is the other thing which the Central Europeans, I think, are very interested in, is the high-end aspect of investment. So whether it's energy, whether it's digital, it's really looking to take a quantitative leap, as it were, qualitative leap rather, into the cutting edge of European Union standards in terms of the level of technology that's going to come in. And the governments, through the funding and through the political support, are actually doing a lot to enable that. That's why you've seen such a big political focus on this. There was the recent summit of the three CEEs countries held, albeit semi-virtually because of COVID, in Tallinn. And there's a great deal of dynamic behind this initiative, which is why this summit that we're having on the 17th of November, the virtual CEE US summit, is so important.
Well, we also do have speakers talking about the LNG angle of energy from Washington, D.C., as well as the Microsoft country director, who was instrumental in bringing in the essentially $1 billion investment from Microsoft into the cloud infrastructure here. So that's also important. And in terms of short term, let's talk about short term for a moment. We're in it's late October 2020. We're in the midst of another perhaps second wave, a lockdown in Poland, and the region has been hit pretty hard the last couple of weeks. How are U.S. companies reacting to this with what is essentially a de facto ban from travel to the region? I mean, a lot of it's being done digitally, virtually, but tell us a bit about what you see from your clients, how they're reacting and handling this.
Well, it is a great challenge, and obviously US companies are at a significant disadvantage, as you say, Tom, because of the travel restrictions. Not between the US and the European Union, not just within Central Europe, and that's limited the ability of executives to travel. Luckily, many US multinationals do have branches or European HQs, so reliant primarily now on executives, senior executives, who are either based in Brussels or London, to be carrying some of the weight of this responsibility, but also relying much more on their country teams. And here is one of the great things that's happened over the years. Actually, is what you might call the pollinization of US companies. Many US companies now, which operate within Central Europe, have refocused their management hiring onto locals, who have actually over the last decade come up considerably in both education and management expertise, and are very capably handling the responsibilities of being here. And a tremendous role, of course, additionally, being played by the embassies, the US embassies in the region, whether it's at the ambassadorial level or at the level of the commercial sections. So those US commercial and State Department employees are also playing a great role in keeping the US investment flag flying at a time when, actually, to be frank, many European competitors are taking advantage and trying to leverage their geographical proximity, their ability to travel, sort of, as it were, sneak in, as it were, and try and create more opportunities for themselves. But never underestimate the US, and I think the US has been very resilient in maintaining both its diplomatic and commercial presence in these difficult times.
Well, one thing I didn't mention to you yet either was that we also have the Department of Commerce. Neil Pickett is one of our speakers as well in the early day, and we also have of 7 to 9 U.S. cities or states that will also be joining us, including the state of Florida, the state of Texas, the state of Washington. We have the city of Austin, the city of Houston, the city of Los Angeles. Quite a few different groups popping in. So we should also reach pretty deeply into the U.S. market and the U.S. cities and states and the businesses there. We also have great exposure or reach across the Central East European region. We've got Enterprise Estonia involved with us. I spoke to you guys in Croatia yesterday morning, and we've had good progress with both Moldova and with Romania, as well as Czech Republic, Poland, of course, several different cities coming in from Poland. We expect also Lithuania. But before we go, one thing I didn't ask you a bit about was what CEC itself is doing. You didn't give your little bit of a 1-minute pitch about what you guys are doing across the region, because also you've been helpful and instrumental in helping us reach into those markets like Croatia, like Romania, that are a bit more difficult for us to reach into. So tell us a bit more about what you do for across the region and your services.
Well, you're very kind, Tom, to recognise our contribution. And it is a fact that through our almost 30-year presence in the region, we've developed a substantial brand reputation here. We are focused very much essentially on promoting the what you might call the interests of not just US companies, to be fair, because we also have a number of European clients, we work with the Asian clients as well. But the goal of our company is really to protect the business model of our clients. So what I mean by that is, particularly in these difficult times, the requirement for certainty and stability in the regulatory environment, the reputational environment, the legal environment and the political environment all come together in something that most Western corporations want to see, which is stability and security. And that can only be achieved by effectively communicating their interests, their requirements, and essentially the concerns they have about the degree to which the COVID crisis, combined with other issues, could possibly affect their commercial presence in the region. So we work with them very closely, looking after their interests in terms of reputation, in terms of the regulatory environment, their political relationships, all of which come together to create what you might call an ecosystem of security around their presence. And that's something which in these difficult times is more important than ever. It's really at a premium, and particularly when you need to be defending your bottom line against not just competitive pressures, but also the pressures that come from cuts in budget, cuts in other areas that these companies are reliant on. So that's essentially what we do, and we've built up a great business around that requirement.
Well, thanks for that, Marek, and we look forward to hearing more details on November 17th at the summit, and appreciate your time tonight, and look forward to you and another 21 speakers on November 17th. We start around lunchtime here in Poland, which the intention is to pick up a lot of the U.S. East Coast businesses and cities there. We finished pretty late in the day here, about 6 o'clock in the day. But appreciate, again, your time today, and very much looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Great pleasure, Tom. Thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you as well on the 17th.